Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. I decided to spend part of my holiday weekend doing what any well-balanced person does and look at the long-term price appreciation or depreciation in some cases of Magic collector boxes since they began all the way back in Throne of Eldraine in 2019. So Throne of Eldraine was kind of the beginning of the flashy era where we started getting way more variants. We started getting showcase variants in every set, more full art, alternate art, things like that, and of course the introduction of the collector boxes that were packed full of those. And what I've done here is I've gone through all of the standard sets plus Unfinity since it sold at standard pricing. Since then, I've put their release dates, their wholesale prices, the current market prices as of today, July 2nd, and then the compound annual growth rate. And of course, compound annual growth rate says what would the single compound appreciation be per year to have gotten from the starting price to the current price from the release day to today. So it basically says, regardless of any ups or downs in the market, any really fast price movement, any slow price movement, what is the overall single number that describes the annual growth rate of these products? And I think if we look at these data, we can kind of divide collector boxes into three sub-eras if we want to take the flashy era of collector boxes thus far and break it down into sub-eras. And so I think we had kind of the early part where they were novel, they were interesting, and people were just kind of getting into the flashy era and seeing all this new art, all these neat alternative treatments of cards. And that would be either the first four or arguably the first five if we want to include Zendikar Rising. And so at this point, we might have expected that print runs were a little lower. Maybe WotC was testing the water with these. And of course, they would have had to have committed to creating these products and having them printed for a couple of these expansions before the first one was released. So it's the kind of thing where they had to go forward with no feedback and go ahead and commit to things. And so that's why when people talk about low print runs for these early ones, you could have several successive sets because the print run numbers would have been decided for maybe even out to Coria, Core 21 before Throne of Eldraine hit the market and could prove itself either as a success or failure. Then we get to Zendikar Rising, and the reason I put Zendikar Rising as kind of transitionary, that it could be either the first sub-phase or the second sub-phase, is because Zendikar Rising was the first one that really had some great value in it. The Zendikar Rising collector boxes had two of the Zendikar Rising Expedition box toppers, and on top of that, the ones in the collector boxes as opposed to the draft and set boxes, they had about a 1 in 12 chance per box topper to be a foil. And if you go over and you look at the prices of those cards today, these are the foil prices for the cards that come in those box toppers. And I mean, there's only 24 or 25 cards in the set, and you can see almost every one of them has a market price of over $100, well over half of them. And so those foils really add a ton of value. And so that's what really buoys this and kind of puts it on that gray line between the early and the second era of collector boxes. And then we get into that second era fully with Kaldheim. Really nothing of great value, but Strixhaven, you had the Mystical Archives, and if you go out and look today, the traditional rainbow foil treatment of the Japanese Demonic Tutor Mystical Archive card is a $250 card. And the Strixhaven collector booster packs, they could have more than one slot with Mystical Archives in them, and then they had a better chance of the better treatments, better chances of mythics and rares, so the more desirable cards reprinted as Mystical Archives. And that's really what set up this for this great performance that it's seen so far. And then we get through the slog of Adventures in the Forgotten Realm and Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt, and just all of these sets that really had nothing to chase in them. And then we had the standout at the beginning of 2022, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty with the Neon Parallel Hitasugu chase cards. And it's like suddenly WotC woke up and said, wait, if we put something really fun to chase, something really rare, something that the market will assign a high value to for a new card, then we can really get these boxes to sell better. But you know what? these next sets were already in the pipeline. Streets of New Capenna, Dominaria United with the dud of Lost Legends. No, those were not chase cards. It was way too much additional money for a 20-cent common. And then Infinity, yes, it had the Galaxy, what's it, the full art Galaxy Land box topper, something like that, but it just wasn't enough. And then we get into what is arguably, hopefully, and what I am claiming will be the kind of third era of collector boxes. Brothers War with the serialized cards. Phyrexia is just a great set on its own. Bafflingly, WotC said we have this thing called collector boxes, but we're going to take the oil slick cards and put them somewhere else. I think that was a dumb move, and then March of the Machine with additional serialized cards. And so I think what we've seen here is the early era where they had lower print runs, they were interesting, and people were not burnt out on the flashiness yet. We have the middle era where WotC had not quite figured out the formula for putting chase value in the sets, and hopefully now we're in this third era where WotC understands every collector box needs to have something worth chasing in it. But there's risks from here. The risks are WotC lazily says, let's just shove serialized cards in every collector box. And then people get burnt out on serialized cards, and within a couple of years, they basically become how they've already become in the sports card world, where you have one-of-ones all over the place. And if you have 30 different treatments of one-of-one of the same base card, it's not really one-of-one, it's one of 30. And people will see through it. People will get tired of putting way too much money into chasing that kind of stuff. So hopefully WotC doesn't overdo the serialized cards. Hopefully they can look at having 4, 5, 6 different chase gimmicks, and they can just use them sparingly, one in each set, but rotate them over time so that none of them gets old too fast. Things like the neon cards, textured foil cards, serialized cards, and other things. So have different ideas for what the gimmick on the specific chase cards are set to set so that none of them gets old too quickly. And if they can manage to do that, then I think they have a good chance of keeping collector boxes going on this last 3 set streak that they're kind of on right now. Now, I know some of you are asking, Craig, what about non-standard sets? And originally I did this analysis with non-standard, and I will show you. So here it is with non-standard. And I've gone ahead and just highlighted the bars that are the non-standard sets. And as I was originally looking at these data, wanting to present them, I realized the much more interesting story was just standard sets plus Infinity. Now, there are some interesting things to talk about here. Rudy has claimed several times that the Commander Legends collector boxes were woefully underprinted, that basically they got a undesirably small first wave and then apparently never got more, so there just aren't that many out there. That's why it's the best performing one. Modern Horizons 2, unsurprisingly, it's done well so far. I think it's going to do awesome in the future once Modern Horizons 2 as a base set goes officially out of print, and we have some time for the market to tighten up the supply of the enemy fetch lands and other things in there. Commander Legends, Baldur's Gate, yes. You know, I've talked a bit about the idiotic pack engineering of draft and set packs in this set. Draft has recovered. The market is being kind of lazily and irrationally negative on Baldur's Gate draft boxes. They are way underpriced today. Set boxes are still appropriately low priced for the junk in them. And the collector boxes, yeah, Rudy has said a lot about how you can open boxes and just get no dragons. The ancient dragons are in the draft boxes, and something that I always pound the table on is last summer I opened 17 of those draft boxes and got 21 ancient dragons. That's where the dragons are, not in the collector boxes. And so this type of terrible performance is well deserved. And remember too, these were sold at a premium price. The wholesale price of these was $231 compared to the regular kind of standard price of $188 at the time. And so they had even further to fall, reflective of their terrible pack engineering. And then Double Masters 2022, yes, that's always going to be a winner no matter what. Just great cards in it. Now, the last interesting non-standard set, Dominaria Remastered, I think this is just a short-term market negativity that's going to go away in time. When you have a set that has Force of Will and Sylvan Library and the Tutors and Urza's Incubator. And then on top of that, just great classic nostalgic cards reprinted. Excellent copious use of original framing, and it's a great set, and I think in time it will do wonderfully. You can't reprint a set with things like Force of Will and all the Tutors in it and have it do poorly. So I think this is just kind of a temporary thing. But you see, it kind of muddies the water to have the non-standard sets in here, and I think there was a much more cohesive story to tell just talking about standard sets. Because obviously non-standard sets, especially master sets, they ought to be able to stand on their own on the value of the great reprints in them. That's why they are master sets. So what do you think, guys? Hopefully we're kind of turning the corner here. Hopefully WotC is getting it together, slowly learning, slowly getting over the long lead time that they have in their products. And they hopefully at this point, they've realized you have to put chase value in these collector boxes in order to move them, in order for the price not to collapse. Now, having said that, for all of these kind of second era collector boxes whose prices have collapsed, they will recover one day. And in fact, the interesting thing you see is that the oldest ones are closer back to breaking even. And in fact, it just kind of steps downwards linearly in time as the newer ones have still not started recovering, because maybe the base set is still officially in print, like several of these, and the supply has not tightened up. The TCG expansion life cycle has not had its time to do its thing and slowly start bringing the price up. And you can imagine 5 years from now, do you think a call time collector box will still sell below wholesale? No. Now, it's not going to perform as well as something like a Double Masters 2022 collector box, but it's probably not a terrible investment. So keep that in mind. You know, the negativity can kind of snowball. It can get out of control through social media, and people can take a overly negative attitude on a product that in reality is selling at an incredible discount to what its future value will be. And like I said earlier in this video, Baldur's Gate draft boxes are a great example of that right now. So let me know what you think, comments, feedback, anything else you're seeing, other ideas. Otherwise, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.